What's up, guys? It's your Josh here, and today I'm going to be talking about 6 dreadful things about the Indian education system. So let's just jump right into the video. There's a growing feeling that there is something wrong with our system of education. But what is it? Well, we send our children to school for them to prepare for the real world, which is in fact changing very, very fast. But has our schools really changed in the last couple of years? The answer is no. In fact, our school systems were actually developed in the industrial age to churn out factory workers, so these industrial values of mass production and mass control still run deep within our schools, and that's what is plaguing the Indian education system. So I'm going to be discussing about 6 major problems with the Indian education system. Problem number 1 is inauthentic learning. Most of the learning that happens in schools today is not authentic, as it relies on memorization and rote learning. The system defines a particular set of knowledge each student must acquire, and every few months a test is administered just to check how much knowledge has been retained. This type of education, your quotation marks, this type of education is not authentic, as most of the knowledge is forgotten right after the test, which is very saddening in fact. And the thing is, at the end of the day, the students don't really understand the concepts, and even if they do, they don't know the application of the concept. They don't know where they will use it. Like, for example, they know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but they don't know where to use it. And that's the problem in the Indian education system. They solely rely on memorization and rote learning. The stuff that is actually important about the applications of what they learn often gets skipped. And another thing is, Indian education system is the only education system that solely, completely focuses on the marks. Marks are like super important in the Indian education system. It is very saddening, as this has created an extremely unhealthy culture in the education system and the education field, as it really created a very bad environment for the students, parents, and teachers alike. Like, the children end up paying hours and hours for tuition and staying up all night and learning, and not even learning, memorizing useless facts that they will probably eventually forget very, very soon, which is very saddening, because the main education's focus should be students learning the concept, knowing where to use it, and to remember that lifelong, so their life is really helped by the knowledge they acquired. And this is not attained by the Indian education system. Problem number 2 is no room for passions and interests. We have an extremely standardized system in which each student must learn the same thing in the same way as everybody else. This does not respect the basic aspect of human beings, as each one of us is different and unique in our own way, and each one of us have different passions, different interests, but the schools do not respect this. The school systems do not respect this. And the key fulfillment in life is figuring out what is your passions. But do schools help you in finding your passion and developing them? Well, the sad truth is, no. Schools do not help you in finding some of the key questions in a child's life. What are they good at? How do they fit into this world? And what do they want to do in life for satisfaction and fulfillment of life? Schools do not provide answers for any of the questions, and end up just teaching rubbish, as a child might totally not need that, but still, there's no measure in the current education system that how much passion and how much potential has gone into trash, maybe, like, gone off, due to the very poor education system. Like, a lot of students that might have been wanting to become an athlete couldn't really find their passion because the school was too busy on teaching them completely stuff totally related to literature and, oh my gosh, William Shakespeare, woo! And that's not the thing. Like, he might have failed in the traditional education system, but if he had the chance of finding his passion on his own, he would have done so much better than to be stuck and tossed around like garbage in the very bad education system. There are a lot of talented people who actually failed in the traditional Indian education system and fortunately ended up being successful. But not everyone can. So I feel like the school should really help in finding the passions and the interests of the student, because if not, everybody will feel like they're the same bunch and they're nothing but robots doing whatever the system asks forever. Problem number 3 is differences in how we learn. This is directly tying in with the previous problem of how we have an extremely standardized system in which every single student must learn the same way as the other. Every student is different in their own way and therefore have different timings of learning. Like one student might be slow while another student might be faster, and students might need different set of resources to excel. Like one student might need a set of resource while the other student needs another. So I feel like the Indian education isn't really taking into consideration all this stuff, and every student must be in a classroom writing down endless useless facts in their notebooks. This is extremely saddening, as in this current era, the modern era, we have so much access to resources and so much time that I feel like this problem should have been abolished like 100 million years ago. Not 100 million years ago, but you get the point, right? This problem should not exist, as we have countless resources nowadays. Each student can pick and choose what they want. One student might be exceptionally great with books, the direct teacher support, talking directly and interacting with the teacher, and actually being in class. Whereas another student might be better off with YouTube videos, some podcasts, and some interactive games, so they get the concept more better. But instead, our Indian education system is all about writing down in the notebooks. And another thing is the slow students. The slow students are often regarded as failures in the Indian education system, but only thing they need is a little bit time to catch up. But instead, they are regarded as failures as they are slow. Whereas some of them might be one of the cleverest person the world is yet to see. And most of the talent and potential goes to waste, as they are considered a failure by the system, and most of them actually considered a failure by the system and the conspiracies around them. They tend to not really care anymore and just end up dropping out, which is extremely saddening, and there's no measure on how much talent and potential we have lost. So I feel like if there's a slow student in school, all they need is a little bit more time to catch up, and they'll be on par with the smart students. Problem number 4 is the lack of autonomy and the lack of control. In our schools, our students experience a complete lack of autonomy and lack of control. Each minute of their life is often decided by the system. In the real world, if you have some set of jobs to do, set of stuff to do, you often go and think about what is your priorities, and you yourself pick out what you're doing today and what you're doing tomorrow, and adjust your timelines, and you might even end up deciding that you're not going to do a thing completely because it's totally irrelevant to you. But in the schools, the system is very different and the environment is very different. And this is sending a dangerous message to the children that they are not in complete control of their own lives. And this might make a student feel that they are inferior and they don't have the complete power to rule their own life. They are not the bosses of themselves, but rather the slaves of the system, which is a very crippling thought, and especially in the teenage times, it might even lead to suicidal thoughts. So that's why I feel like the school should let the students kind of pick and choose what they want to do, and instead of completely deciding what the system wants to do. I'm not telling the school should totally not care about the students, because if that was the case, each school will be burned to ground by now, because students will be building flamethrowers and stuff. But I'm telling the control should be over discipline rather than their complete control and autonomy of time. I would say the complete control of autonomy is often the key to success, as the student will learn how to manage their time and at the end of the day become much more productive person and know the time is valuable rather than being demanded to do something and at the end him thinking that he is bad or he is inferior to the system. Problem number 5 is industrial age values. All day long, our students do nothing but follow instruction, and their life is governed by the ringing of bells. Following instructions such as sit down, take your book, turn to page 69, and shut up, do problem number 420. All these factors and actually adhering to commands were really important for factory workers of the early 800s and 900s. But can you really think of a person who has really gone successful with just hearing about commands from other people? In today's world, do you think a person who only follows the instructions can really prosper? The answer is no, and today's world actually needs creative thinkers, collaborators, and communicators that are so good that they can even turn the worst possible scenario into a quite acceptable scenario. So that's what the schools are lacking, as they completely tighten the students' brains and they don't let it freely flow. Rather, they just contain it, as most of the time they're just following the rules of a higher man, usually the teacher. And I feel like this is not the right way to do, because at the end of the day, children can't really express their creative selves, so they are still lacking the autonomy and control I was talking about in the previous concept, and still end up thinking that they're pretty bad, because in today's world, when they come to the real cruel world, they don't have the stuff to sustain, as they don't have the power to think, as they were often told the instructions on what to do. In the current system of education, students are lectured for more than 5 hours a day. And I would say lecturing is a fundamentally dehumanizing experience. And lecturing does nothing but just demotivate students from actually getting into classes, as most of the time lecturings aren't the best way for education. Education should be much deeper and authentic. It should be more interactive, more practical. Like, just think about it. What can you really do just reading books and transferring data right into your mind and remembering it? But rather, you could practice it, like stuff you learn. You just go out, do an experiment, and that will let you learn in a more practical way and learn about the applications, which can be very, very useful in your life, rather than just simply hearing to a lecture and being there like, okay, but where do I use this in real life? Like, lecturing is a fundamentally dehumanizing experience, as I already said, but the thing is that really demotivates the students from actually listening to classes, as they are often not quite engaging for the students of this current era. The education system was developed in the pretty old days, guys, so we gotta think about the newer students too. Like, the newer students are often, they have resources at their fingertips. Like, they aren't really into the lecturing because they have resources at their fingertips, and they are much likely enjoy an interactive session with the teacher and a really practical session than to just hear a dehumanizing lecture for 5 hours a day. Like, just think about it. Would you be happy just listening to your boss screaming all day? No, right? That's the thing. Like, students have so many incredible resources at their hands, but the school, in fear of losing control, aren't really allowing the abuse of these resources. But whereas in the real world, if you can use your resources to full potential, you're the man. At the end of the day, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say the school should be a little bit more modernized than to really stay with the industrial age values and to govern the students and let the students have a little bit more freedom. Like, think about what they're going to do. Like, let them manage their own time rather than completely governing them. Because at the end of the day, when you keep them in an extremely stally thing, they're not going to be the creative thinkers and collaborators the world needs. And when you completely demotivate them because giving them completely no control, well, they're going to end up thinking that they're inferior, and that might cause a lot of existential crisis. And I feel like students should be able to use more resources and pick and choose what their resources are, so they can end up prospering in life by the usage of resources which will be there in the modern world for them, unlike schools. And I feel like schools should overall give less attention to marks and give more attention to the passion and interest of students. Peace and out. It's Josh.